elections and the corruption scandals that have been bedeviling our society, we really did not talk much about. But what is the feeling when we start seeing these Kenyan soldiers coming back? Are we really giving up on South Sudan? Why are we not even carrying this discussion beyond the fact that the president said we are angry, we are withdrawing the troops? What does it mean for us? We have a situation here where we have enough Kenyans in South Sudan, and the withdrawal of troops definitely has some ramifications.
Well, Fred, let's be honest about ourselves, the new development, and South Sudan itself. And the first thing that we need to say clearly is that the people of Southern Sudan, the leadership of Southern Sudan, must first realize that the welfare, the security and safety of their people lies squarely in their hands, and it is and should be their number one priority. Notwithstanding the support that they have been getting from the international community, because you see, and I say this with a clear head, when Southern Sudan came to being as a state, it had the entire support of the entire world. Remember, meetings were held here in Kenya, in the United States, all over the world, and the whole world rallied behind Southern Sudan because they wanted to see the creation of that nation. But that might have deceived the leadership of Southern Sudan, those that got elected, that they don't have a stake, that they should not stand up and be responsible for what happens after. And I think they became over-dependent and over-expectant that it matters more to us that they are safe, that they are running the country well, than it matters to them. And see what has been happening, and you can draw this from the actions and the failure to keep commitments from the two top leaders, that is Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. I mean, you find that you see they have been having this back and forth of who and what do this and fighting about guns. I mean, instead of doing what probably one would have expected that probably if Garang was there would have done, and what he did at that particular time of holding those people together, these fellows came and shattered that unity immediately. And so, although our troops are coming back home, and it is very sad that we have had to reach this point, let them come and we renegotiate. But the message here should be this, that the people of Southern Sudan, the leadership of Southern Sudan, I remember the other day we had this discussion here. We said, why not have these guys even removed here from Nairobi? Let them go back home. Let them go yes, and carry the responsibility.
When I see what is happening in respect of our returning troops, what pains me are the handlers of the presidency, not of the president, but of the presidency. When an event like this happens, there are many precedents. This is not unprecedented. Yes. Kofi Annan, when he was the chief of the UN, just like Ban Ki-moon, Major General Vijay Kumar, for impropriety, when he was commanding a UN force, was actually dismissed, the way they dismissed our man. That did not result into India withdrawing her troops from the peacekeeping force. The president's reaction was emotional, was knee-jerk. If our commander was expected to make sure that civilians were safe, and he did not, to make sure that civilians are not raped, and they were raped, he failed. So his matter should have been addressed as an individual, and not a case of the UN against Kenya.
And of course, there are those who argue that even the matter of that commander being dismissed was just a smokescreen, that there are deeper issues that are underlying in this matter. Do you think that Kenya withdrawing the troops at this time, when the situation in South Sudan is really very fragile, that it serves our situation to some extent?
First of all, let me say that I'm the chair of regional integration in Parliament. The committee that deals with the integration within the East African community, and of course South Sudan now is the latest entrant into the integration process. the initial thinking of sending our troops to South Sudan was to ensure that South Sudan is able to grow its own democracy and the peace processes, and to ensure the citizens are taken care of. But what I don't like about what happened to Lieutenant General Odiek was that you cannot condemn someone unharmed. If there was that allegation that he never went out of his way to protect the people as they were, then we advocate for administrative action, fair administrative action. There is a process through which he ought to have been taken through. If it's disciplinary processes, if it is a matter of being an opportunity to tell us why he failed, assuming in the first place that he failed. So I believe that it was in the right way in which they treated our peacekeeping force, and I don't think even the president, by taking that action, it meant that we cannot renegotiate and maintain the peace process. I think it's a good way of saying you did wrong. We have offered, you know, for a son of this soil to decide to go to South Sudan, it's sacrifice. It's a risk. And if I've risked my life to come and try to protect your people, at least respect me, my human dignity, and what I'm doing for your country. So if we start with that process of respect for our forces, I think this is not a done deal. It's something that can be negotiated, because our president also believes in the integration process.
Senator Hassan Omar, of course, Kenya and Nairobi has been accused of taking sides in this matter, and probably that's the biggest problem, because right now we're even seeing Kenyans who are in South Sudan facing some troubles after all this happened. Remember the spokesperson for SPLM-IO being deported back to South Sudan, knowing very well that he's going to be arrested once he lands there. And immediately he landed, he was arrested.
And it's now under security detention.
Exactly. And do you think Kenya is handling this matter in the right way?
I think in terms of strategy or policy towards our regional partners, Moi did far better. I think Kenya has polarized itself within its neighbors and has lost its legitimacy within the various factions which are at war. Maybe it's in Somalia. The strategy that was pursued initially was fairly neutral. We went in to create a buffer zone and to create another republic. You know, the dynamics took a clan dimension. So what I think, what the president has done in this particular respect, is that it's an overreaction. And I think the international community will, sooner than later, will call Kenya's bluff. You know, you make it appear like you're being victimized by the UN. For what purpose? This is not the first time Kenya has been in a peacekeeping mission. We've never had this type of reaction, and I don't think there's any need for any administrative action. That's the military. That's not a village committee. That's a military. Military is command, and command there is a CNC, and the CNC can decide to take action swiftly when he so decides. You do not need to refer to anybody. And the CNC in this matter is metaphorically the Secretary General of the United Nations. I stand with General Ondieki. I mean, I think he deserved better. But in the circumstances, I don't think Kenya ought to have removed its troops. And you know, Kenya tends to react to these things to create, I think, either international recognition or to negotiate or to come to to blackmail the international community. I don't know for what purpose they do it. This so sudden expulsion of of Kenyan of refugees. So that you can create a flurry of activity, and it's like a young person always shouting to be noticed, a baby crying to be noticed. So I think what happens is, I think the international community sooner than later is going to call our bluff. In fact, if they want to call our bluff on this issue of South Sudan, we might, rather than this negotiation post-withdrawal, they just need to shut up and look for Tanzania or Uganda or anybody else to cover the gap or the vacuum left by Kenya, and life can go on. So I think we must be very careful.
Hassan Omar was a member of the military. I don't know whether you know that. Yes, he had joined the forces sometimes. And there's one thing. There's something that he knows. There's something that Hassan Omar knows. If you go to war as a battalion and you're fighting against opponents, if your opponents manage, even before you fired, to capture your general, then you have lost. And I'll tell you why, and what happens in this kind of case. And I see the president's position. You see, if you target the general who is in charge of that force, you demoralize everybody else. And that's why there's need to renegotiate. Because it is really about the morale of the rest of the force. Once you've disparaged the general, and without a process that seems to first recognize and ensure that the fighting troops retain that commitment. I mean, once you've shot at him and fired him and removed him unceremoniously, now what that might have as an effect to the others is also to be demoralized, and you can have a worse and more grave situation. So I believe, and the best way forward in this, in my position, that's why I support what the president did, would be withdraw the troops, renegotiate.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
but you see, if the president has a mind of reflecting on the presence of Kenyan troops in other countries, he had an opportunity to do so on the troops in Somalia. The troops we expected the president to withdraw are the ones from Somalia, because they have become an occupation force in Somalia. In Somalia, they have gone into illegal business of trading in charcoal and other contraband. They should be withdrawn and be brought to the Kenyan border and defend us from the border.
Okay. And then this perception that constantly, because the UN report, UN monitoring group report from Somalia says we are trading in charcoal. Yes, they have accused us of massive human rights abuses. Yeah. They have accused us in the last report of bombing civilian targets. Yes. And therefore, that force is now mutating to an occupation force, and it is going to be viewed as an enemy. Yes. And very soon we'll be able to evoke nationalist sentiments within the Somali population. And it's something when Kenya then positions itself like what Isipi did to make it appear like the UN is victimizing it. Well, what interest does the UN have to victimize Kenya, for that matter?
It is definitely something new when we see KDF being looked at in negative matters, in a negative light, both in South Sudan and in Somalia. It's something new because just a few years back it was all applause and praise for KDF and what was happening. And General Officer in charge of the Eastern Command, Major General Benjamin Biwott, who received the soldiers, the 100 soldiers who jetted in back home yesterday, he said that 1,000 soldiers were expected back in the country over the next few days. And of course we'll keep tabs on that matter. But now we want to end our news review by discussing some politics. And of course, Wiper Party, and I understand Ford Kenya as well. And we have the Secretary General, Wiper Democratic Movement. We have the Secretary General with us, and Ford Kenya, we have the Deputy Party Leader with us. And of course, what they are doing is, of course, something.